With the start of a new year and a new presidential administration, 2009 may likely be a year of uncertainty for cattle producers. We have more on the 2009 industry outlook in this week's Market Watch.
Market Watch, brought to you by Fort Dodge Animal Health.
Joining me today in the studio is Randy Block, CEO of CattleFax. Thanks for joining us today, Randy.
My pleasure, Kevin.
You know, as we move into 2009, the economy is in the headlines. What is your thought about how the economy is going to impact the cattle industry in the coming year?
Well, I think we can see as we all look back the last 6 months of 2008, the economy is a real factor in all these markets, not just the beef industry. We've seen the credit markets freeze up through the fall of 2008. They're gradually starting to thaw out. That's a key piece of what we need to see improve in the economy in order to start stimulating more export trade, get things moving here domestically. So that's one of the things we'll be watching. There's still a lot of bad news that come in this economy over the course of the next 6 months, but we believe the lion's share of the bad news has already been priced in. So we're hopeful as we get into late 2009, we'll start to see some improvement.
That's great news. You know, producers have been hard hit by input costs over the last year. What are your expectations about feed and fuel costs as we move into 2009?
Well, feed and fuel costs were a real challenge for our industry in 2008. We've seen a tremendous correction in those costs in the last 3 months. Fuel costs are back under $40 a barrel on crude oil. We've seen feed costs decline significantly. We haven't seen much softening in hay prices yet, but all of those things should start to stabilize in here and allow these producers to start to improve their margin situation just a little bit. Our biggest problem in 2008, we just didn't know where the high end of these costs were.
That's right.
And it was a real problem for us, and consequently, the industry didn't expand at all. In fact, we contracted the nation's herds.
It was a learning year, wasn't it?
It was definitely a learning year.
You know, many news stories talk about the reduction in consumer spending. How will consumer demand impact the beef cattle industry here in the future?
Well, demand is obviously a big part of the equation. We've got supply on one side and demand on the other. The supply side of the equation, 2009, is actually going to be quite favorable, not only for beef, but for pork and poultry. Supplies are going to be smaller for each of those meat segments as a result of the costs that we saw in 2008. The demand piece is absolutely critical. We've seen softening demand through the second half of 2008. We're a little softer here in early 2009. We're seeing consumers change their buying habits. They're buying more of the lower priced items. We're seeing our in-meat prices chuck around and trim prices continue to hold their values well.
Right.
But because of casual dining struggling the way it is, these middle meat items, steaks, whether they're ribeyes, strips, or tenderloins, those prices have been pretty soft. So exports are a big part of that if we can move more of that product overseas.
Well, we appreciate what you do and appreciate your insight. Thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you, Kevin.
To learn more about CattleFax and the 2009 industry outlook, visit CattleFax.com.